Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church Weekly Podcast, a conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hey, Ephrata Community Church, welcome to the weekly podcast where we take time to talk about the previous weekend service, look forward to what we are planning for up ahead. And this morning, really excited to be joined with you, Dan. Dan
Absolutely.
Is our pastor of leadership development.
Yep.
Though he could have so many other titles attached
Jim said
to
a couple of weeks ago, he's like, Dan does so many things, and I was just like, tell me more, Jim.
Yeah. I would say Dan is also the, not necessarily the title we're going to give him, but he is behind the scenes the golf expert on the staff team. Gives lessons. If you're ever curious to learn, just
For
go.
free is why they come
just
to me.
go get him around to golf, and he'll tell you everything you want to know about how to improve, which is the only reason why I like hanging out with you, Dan.
I understand.
Everything else is because we work together. But
Yep, I understand.
Speaking of, we get to talk on the podcast.
Yes,
of course,
that's a
I'm
good thing.
kidding. And Dan, I'd really deeply appreciate you. So we just had our Take One Step weekend, and we do this twice a year at the start of each of our semesters. Of course, we're going into the fall semester. And there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of groups, a lot of steps, a lot of opportunities, but Take One Step weekend is really about the heartbeat that the most important step you can take is the one that the Spirit of God is leading you to take. That's the one that's going to bear the most fruit, and it's really born out of our value that we live and believe in the reality of a transformed life, that growth is normal, that we don't preach sin management, we preach sin freedom. Right. We had Autumn's testimony telling about the freedom she's experienced, and so which ignites. It's a shot to the arm of faith. That like, man, you know what? I'm going to believe God for, and then fill in the blank. But it's also not just about our own prescription of what I want God to do in my life, but it's also this yielding. God, you're my Lord, and you're my shepherd. So what step do you have me take? So that's really the heartbeat. A lot of fun conversations that took place. It was a lot of fun. And I'm just curious to look to you to say, like, what's your general observation? I mean, you've been, as a pastor, both here at ECC, other churches, you in leadership development, you coach other pastors in the region. And so obviously this is an ECC value, but I would imagine you see this in other churches represented in different ways or maybe different language, but the same heartbeat. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, one of the strengths in what we do here is, I think what's important when you're talking about community formation, so to speak, spiritual formation within a community, is to have predictable patterns. And the way the Take One Step weekend regularly weaves itself within the patterns of humans' lives. And, a lot of time people fall, kids getting back to school, kind of a shift even in the weather. And it's like, okay, culturally, football season starting, all these things. And then we're like, hey, at the same time, we're going to invite you to take a step in what's next in your spiritual journey. I think it's really important. And so it's a huge cultural piece here, but it's not just because it's a cultural piece here. It's not because we have a theological basis for it. It's actually, it works to help people think about things when you have their attention so that you can galvanize, even the season and the shifts in their personal lives into a greater step of their spiritual growth. And so it's if I was coaching other people or, and even as a community here, man, it's a real strength at ECC, Take One Step weekend, the way that there's just a buzz about it and the way that you're part of it for a few, maybe once or twice. And I think I can see and hear the way that leading up to it, people that are, let's call them seasoned ECCers, are preempting the weekend already in the discernment process. And that's a good thing. I mean, as a pastor of discipleship, that's got to get you excited. I mean, you have so much, you put so much work. I mean, I wish you all knew just the amount of energy, time, prayer that you pour into this weekend. How did you think it went with it now that you're,
on this side of
the weekend?
Yeah, there's definitely,
I mean, not only that, but you preached. So you did the
the
leadership of it, but then the preaching of it.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into orchestrating a church culture that facilitates this faith belief, which is life change is normal. You should expect to grow.
Yep.
You shouldn't expect, let me say it this way, it shouldn't be that you look in the rear view and say, there once was a day where I was on fire for Jesus. Or I remember years ago, whenever a previous season, that I was going after God. And then present reality is you kind of come down off of that mountain, so to speak. And but the reality is, Psalm 1, they bear fruit in every season. Every season is designed for growth. There is growth. God doesn't look at you and say, I'm not sure what to do with you. Call me back later. There is a way that God can purpose and bring growth into your life in this season. Christ-likeness is what I mean by growth, bearing the fruit of Christ, no matter what you're facing. And so there's a lot of that goes into orchestrating the weekend. Of course, it's a deep just honor and privilege to be able to have the opportunity to share the message and really communicate. There's so many ways you can go with the message of Take One Step. Yeah, I was really blessed that a couple weeks ago, God gave me the large bullet points, umbrellas of, hey, it's your birthright to discern God's will. He does communicate to you because you're his child. And the biggest thing that'll make it difficult, you have so much complexity in normal life that we, responsibilities, but the number one thing that makes it difficult is your own will. And so that's the hardest part of discerning God. What's your next step for me is when it can get mixed with what I want. What do I want God to do?
That's right. What do I want the next step to be? Yeah.
So that's the heartbeat of the message, to really do our best to kind of set my will to the side. And in that place, there's a grace to discern. Maybe not immediately, but in that season, there's a grace to discern. This is what God would have me do. And so that was the heartbeat. It was fun. It was solid. It's funny to say that about my own message. What I meant was,
good, man.
It was deeply fulfilling to communicate that heart of God, and I was blessed by the interaction. Of course, the gathering room too was it was lit.
It was fun.
A lot of conversations, a lot of people signing up for groups, and which is great.
It was great, and I think that those two clear points really came through, and I was thinking about the fact, even as you were sharing now, the discerning God's will as a birthright.
Sure.
Right. Powerful. And, obviously leaning on Romans 8 and powerful truth in there. That could have been something fresh and a fresh thought for somebody that was extremely transformative alone this weekend.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, then the challenge, that came with the other side of, surrendering your will for that. Dude, I really appreciated that. I think, I had the privilege of serving on some of our prayer ministry teams, and so I had the privilege. When you speak, sometimes you get that, but then also being on the team, you get to actually witness what the Spirit was doing in people because of their response. And I think the Lord really just went after a lot of people's hearts around this area of discernment and what He had for them. Yeah, and so. Which is so encouraging. I mean, God's at work in people on a regular basis, but us doing this creates those opportunities where it's like a spiritual discipline that we have as a church that creates opportunities for God to break in and lead people to new places. Yeah, 100%. And I saw that this weekend.
Yeah, there's a prayer that, as you're chatting, just comes to mind that I pray over our semesters over discipleship at ECC. Actually, I think it was Take One Step weekend a year ago, where I shared a message on this point. Though, if it's not that weekend, it's another weekend. I know I preached it here, but I do pray it every weekend. It comes out of John 4 every weekend. Sorry, I pray it over our semesters, over people. Coming out of John 4, when Jesus ministers to this woman at the well, in that whole story, there are three particular ways that I pray out of. The first one, Jesus, when he ministers to this woman, and you got to read the story for yourself. I don't have the time to go in and unpack it. Verses. I could go in for 40 minutes just preaching John 4, Jesus ministering to the woman at the well. The depth of what that story communicates about the heart of God is just profound. But so the disciples are going to get lunch, and he ministers to this woman. She radically encounters grace and the love and the redemption and the heart and the identity that God gives. And so she goes back to her people in her hometown. Meanwhile, while she's going back home, Jesus' disciples come to him, said, here's food. And Jesus said, I have food to eat that you don't know about. My food is to do the will of God who sent me. And so the first prayer, Lord, over our disciples, as people take one step, I pray, Father, that you would inspire in people the way that you have gifted them to serve, not just in the context of a local church, but just the, God, here am I, use me, kind of, I'm available. Because Scripture and Jesus said, I have food to eat you don't even know about. There's a nourishment to your walk with Jesus that you're only experiencing when you experience God use you to bless another person out of the gifting of his Spirit. And dude, that is a spiritual mountaintop experience that a lot of people, I'm not sure, forgive my language, I know there are a lot of people who have yet to experience that.
Yep.
Many do. I think there are a lot more that have the invitation to. Mm-hmm. My prayer is, God, would you draw people into this place of discovering their gifts and leaning into the God, here am I, use me kind of posture. The second prayer is when she goes to her hometown and all the people come to Jesus themselves, and they encounter the profound love of Christ themselves. And they say to the woman, we believe not just because of your testimony, but because we've met him for ourselves. And I see this time and time again in our Take One Step weekend, and you described it, and I said it. There's a vibe, there's an energy, there's a let's do this. There's people saying, you know what, I'm going to get off the couch, I'm going to do something. And that's the nature of, it's a catalyzing weekend. Yep. It taps into what genuinely is in the hearts of people. It surfaces it, and naturally people are saying, I'll take a step. Yep. But there's a lot of people that are taking a step based on the testimony of somebody else, meaning they hear Autumn's testimony video and they go, you know what, I'm going to believe God for that type of transformation in my life. And they're taking a step. And they hear me get up there and share, oh, here's a great message, and here's a testimony of how I experienced God shine a light and bring discernment in my life. Yes. And you go, I need that in my life. God, I'm going to take a step to engage that. Yeah. My prayer is, Lord, I pray that those who are taking a step based on the testimony of another person, so the woman at the well testified and the hometown came to meet him themselves, would then experience Jesus themselves and go, I believe because of my own testimony now, not because of your testimony. And I don't know, I think that just gets me excited. And I know I only said 2 and I have 3 prayers, but the nature of the podcast is you can only go with what's top of mind. And I'm forgetting what the third prayer is, but I bet when it comes to mind, I'm going to be like, turn the cameras back on. I got to say it. Got it. Well, but there are 3 prayers coming out of that passage.
Well, here's the other question I have for you though. Yeah. You know, as people are discerning their steps, one of the things you highlighted this weekend was sometimes the step that God will give you is not the step you want, right? That whole surrendering thing. Sure. But then you specifically kind of tease that out a little bit more from the story of Joseph and specifically God's mercy towards us in the way that he shows us steps that may not be the steps we're looking for. And that, I mean, that was worth the price of admission, which was free, by the way. Yeah. But it was good. Yeah. And so as somebody who's obviously, you know, you're a pastor of discipleship, you love people, you want to help people take their next step, you know, who that person that's listening to this after that message that is at the place in their life where they're like, man, I mean, either God has showed them that step and they don't want to take it because it's hard, or it doesn't feel like mercy. Sure. Right. Or they're not sure if they can discern that step. You know, what would you say to them? There's 2 questions there.
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to start by saying I remember what the third prayer is from John 4. But it actually is answering your question.
I'll remember my questions then.
No, this is answering your question. Okay. God has a way of orchestrating all the things in our life. He is gracious to us. The woman at the well asked for living water, and the third prayer is that we posture ourselves with this, Lord, I want the living water you have for me. Yeah. And the nature of that prayer, and specifically in John 4, Jesus says, go get your husband. And what did he do? He surfaced the very area of her life that she was probably most embarrassed or shamed by. Yeah. The area where her rejection, perhaps a lot of her rejection was rooted or sourced from. She said, give me living water. And Jesus invites her to take a step that she might not have been excited to take, or maybe at first thought, that's not where I want to go. But yet Jesus, being the shepherd of your soul, knows exactly the condition you're in. Psalm 147 verse 5 is like my favorite verse in the Bible. And it says that his understanding is infinite. Yeah. And so he knows the condition of where my soul is. Psalm 23, he restores my soul. So the prayer, God, would Ephrata Community Church be a church that says, God, I'm asking you for living water, and I say yes to what you prescribe to me. Yeah. Even if it's just, it brings an area of, I'm not so sure. I can imagine the woman at the well felt that way until she encountered the heart of God and realized this is a safe place, and realized I can trust him, which then brings up, and again, I'm answering your question, brings up this place. If you feel an anxiety around either letting go of the control, you could be praying till the cows come home, the most charismatic, spirit-filled, in the name of Jesus prayers. Yeah. But we need to then give that to the Lord and then say, God, what would you have me do? If you find anxiety or it's uneasy, to let go and trust that place to God, or maybe you find more comfort in just continuing to declare a thing, and the idea of not declaring, just come to rest, knowing that God's got it. Okay, let's get there. If that is a hard place to get to, a thing that I've chatted with a number of people about over the years is this reality that peace in the lordship of God over my life. If I'm lacking peace in the idea that I'm going to trust this to God, peace in the lordship of Jesus is only as good as my trust in the nature of Jesus. Yeah. So if I'm lacking peace, I actually need to think and pause and look to, is there a part of God's nature that I either am not aware of or I'm not trusting in? Because he is a good father, and he's a good shepherd, and his understanding is perfect, and he restores my soul, and he gives living water. Yep. And he's a redeemer and a comforter, and he's a peace bringer, and he inspires life, and I would have abundant life, right? And I came that you would be, by Romans 16, that the peace of God will soon crush Satan. Okay, right. So you want Satan crushed in your life? It looks a lot like coming to this place of encountering the I am. He is freedom. He is peace. And if I can't get there, again, then I need to investigate, where is there a breakdown in my faith or my trust in who Jesus says he is by his word? Yeah. Getting back to the story I shared about holding hands with my son, God's a lamp to my feet, but in that illustration, you might think, well, his eyes were completely closed. He didn't see anything. And I think my point is made even more clear, that while we wait for God to highlight what my next step is or what the living water step might be, the woman at the well, it was go get your husband. And that led to her complete freedom. For us, we don't know what it is, perhaps. So my eyes are completely, I'm choosing to not live by sight. I'm closing my eyes to what I might want to draw understanding from. Or, oh, God might want to do this or this. No, I'm closing my eyes to all of it, saying, God, give me living water, illuminate my path by your word. And in the meantime, I'm rightly connected to you by hand, and that is 100% where my peace comes from. Right. So if you find yourself lacking peace, I'd invite you to consider, am I truly trusting in his nature, or what about his nature am I not aware of? Does that
man, that's good. I think because it's like, you could discern, there's a step in freedom, and it could be to take one of the courses or offerings we have in freedom, and there could be a place where you're just like, I maybe even speaking to somebody right now where it's like, man, what this is going to unearth and what this is going to require me to unearth of myself. There's such a pain and shame and all the things tied up in that. Yep. And you're saying, but if you have faith that if God's leading that, it's living water, like you'll take that step.
I think that's the faith that enables you to posture yourself, saying, God, I give you control of this. I'm going to pray every day about it. Joseph in prison, he better have been praying every day, God, deliver me. I think that's a legitimate prayer. But to maintain a health between you and God and the world around you, you need to be able to trust that to God and say, he's Lord, he's sovereign, he's watching over me, he's my shepherd. A parallel story could be, Acts 16. Paul and Silas, Paul's in prison. It's the best story ever.
Yeah.
And they worshiped, and the chains broke off.
Yeah.
And the scripture says everybody who was imprisoned was freed.
Yeah.
Everybody then, I imagine, ran out. But you know who didn't leave? Was Paul. You know, he stayed the whole night without chains on him. He's camping out. He's like, this is comfortable. I'm good. And I love that because the next morning, the jailer, there's so many details of this story I'm not touching on.
Yep.
For time,
I know where you're going,
but you got to. It is so good. The
Yeah.
Bible just explodes when you anyway. Okay, so the next morning the jailer comes to Paul and says, "Hey, I know that you don't have any chains on you. This is my paraphrase, but like they literally said you can go, so you can leave now." And he said, "No, they put me in jail. They can come free me." Is what he says. And I'm like, this guy, you can't. When a person's rightly connected to, I have liberty in Christ, there is no chain you could put on me. There's no circumstance I can find myself in that can Romans 8, what can separate me from the love of Christ? Like Paul was so rightly tethered to the Lord that like Jesus slept in the boat in the middle of a storm. That's where we can get to. Where I can say, God, I'm praying for you to do this. Paul had his prayer life. He was praying for God to move. But the circumstances were, what passage is it? When I was lashed 39 times and shipwrecked, and you go down through the bullet point checklist of this guy went through it.
Yep.
Yet he maintains this faith, and he's run the race to the end, and he's faithful. And I can go on and on. The point is that there's this invitation for the church broadly. But I say yes to this invitation for me personally. He's like, God, I want to get to a place where I pray the most alive, faith-filled, I know God can do it, and his cross and his blood purchased in his covenant gives me access to it.
Yep.
But I trust God to be the one who brings it about while I abide and walk faithfully with what he clearly highlights as living water for me to do in this next step.
And knowing he will.
Yeah.
Like his desire for you is that
exactly
that is oftentimes greater than yours in the moment.
Yeah. Oh,
right. So, so I mean,
he wants it more than you. He hung on a cross for it.
That's right. He wants it more than you.
He's bought into this working out.
So even if you're at a place right now where you're like, man, I don't know what to do, and I feel like I want to take a step, and I'm worked up because I still haven't figured it out, and I have to sign up by this time. Even in the most practical sense, like abide in the Lord. Like he wants your next step for you
for sure.
More than you do, and he will reveal it. Well, that's awesome, Matt.
Yeah.
You guys, I hope you all can just tell the way this just pours out of Matt, which is a gift.
The hardest part of preaching a weekend service is chopping off all the things you want to say. It's like we don't have time for everything, and there's so many different things. It's like,
that's
I
great.
Say this,
well, take a step. Please take a look at what we have to offer. Yeah. And there's also outside of our discipleship offerings, ways that God's maybe leading you to take a step this fall. Yeah. And we are here to walk with you through that.
Yeah.
And we kind of move into now a new series next week. Do you remember what that's all about, Matt?
I do remember. I don't know what it's called, but it's around shape, right? So spiritual gifts and the way God has wired you is on purpose for a purpose, right? Is really
bodybuilding. Is the name of the series.
That's right, bodybuilding.
Yeah. So we're going to be walking through an acronym SHAPE, which is your spiritual gifts, your heart, your abilities, your personality, and your experiences.
Yeah.
And the way that God has created you and the things that you've gone through and the ways that you're naturally and spiritually inclined that God wants to use for your good, but also for his glory.
Right.
And so it's going to be exciting.
It's going to be incredible. I think Kevin's up this weekend. You're service pastor.
I'm service pastor.
Are you on to preach any of the messages?
Yeah, 2 weekends.
Nice.
2 weekends from now.
Okay. So it's Kevin and then Dan.
I could be wrong about that. Well, I'd have to look at a calendar, but I will be preaching sometime between now and the end of October.
Yeah,
I promise you.
It's fun to hang out with you, Dan.
Yeah, you too, man. It's good to see all of you, and thank you for joining us this week. Blessings to you. Have a good one.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us at effortacommunitychurch.com.